I want to talk with regard to the budget specifically about some of your lab services. And we talked about that last year, and I know I had some sidebar discussions on the needs there. So we're in another year now. But before I do that, I wanted to point out, in case everybody didn't have a chance to read it in your comments, talking about the State Crime Lab, about the accreditation, the international accreditation, which made me feel really good since I was concerned about some of the aging equipment and so on. I'm very delighted to see that. But in the next sentence, I'm also seeing one of your concerns, and that's the fact that you were only able to recoup approximately 10% of the lab user fee. And when I look at the numbers, then that really got my attention. You state last year we requested, it looks like $13,509,099 and received only $1,302,000 or so from the defendants. That seems a bit of a challenge to me when you, as we segue now into the discussion about the lab services. So specifically, I wanted to talk about what was in this past year's budget that was earmarked for the forensic laboratory support program, and that was $1.5 million. And ask you just briefly to tell us how that was spent. That was supposed to relieve some of the backlog, I think, on the Bureau of Forensic Services and so on, and maybe staffing. But if you can tell me first how that was used and how that was able to benefit us.
Yeah, actually, that all went towards our DNA laboratory. We've hired a number of other examiners. The problem we've run into now, we have no place to put any more examiners in our DNA laboratory. It is, you can't hardly turn around in there. That's been the most rapid growth as far as requests for forensic type services is with our DNA. So that's where it's gone. Most of our other laboratories are basically have been there's been no increase in personnel. We are able to provide, I think, excellent equipment because we through grants and things like that. But what concerns me about going forward with our laboratories is many of them are in older, very older buildings. They're cramped. There's equipment everywhere, and I think this is one of the reasons that I put that in my statement, because I do think that going forward, we're seeing a tremendous increase, not just for DNA, although that's the leading, but for all services and from DAs across the state, because they're demanding more and more forensic examinations for a lot of these crimes that come forward. And as we move forward, I think we're going to have to address in some of these buildings, and that's always difficult, but I think it's going to be necessary. And I'm really glad you brought up that international accreditation, because that's the highest accreditation you could have for laboratory services, and that's the Pennsylvania State Police. And why that's so important to us, the real expense on laboratories comes when you send your examiners out to testify, and the higher your standards are in having this accreditation, then most of the times they don't require that they agree to it. So it's a huge fact. If they were to, if every trial, if we had to send our examiners out, then it would really shut us down, because it would be. But so having this accreditation, it's a real compliment to the men and women that work in that laboratory. They are as dedicated as anybody in the state police. I want to tell you, they do an unbelievable job.
And they can work in some really small spaces, obviously.
Yes, they do.
You're making me think when you talk about the workload and the increase in doing so in technology and its advantages, especially as it relates to DNA. Do you think that we've placed maybe unrealistic expectations on the value, and that, that's a question, an expert question I ask you. What do you think about that?
Yes, there is no doubt, but here's the thing: juries expect it. If you don't send items in, even items that the likelihood that you would ever find anything on them. If you don't send them in, somebody's going to question. So, but what's happening, everybody is sending just about an awful lot of evidence in to our laboratory, which we have to examine. And that is a problem, but it's not one. I don't think that's going to go down. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I think we're going to be getting more and more requests for this type of service, and it's something we're going to have to meet. Now, when it works, by the way, when it does work, it's magic. I mean, there are crimes that you have no idea who may have committed them, and the DNA will solve it for you. So I understand why it's sort of like the last resort you might as well send everything in, and that's what we're getting. But it is something we have to deal with.
Well, as it became available, obviously, there were those who would like to see it used on everyone who's arrested. But everyone who's arrested is not necessarily ultimately guilty. So there's been discussion about an expungement process as well on, some of the DNA results. Have you administratively been looking at that? What is your thought on the expungement? And what would that cost you, in dollars and cents?
The numbers on it, it would depend on who we're going to expunge. But I'm very cautious about that because if we make automatic expungements, and for one thing, we have no knowledge. Say you're charged with a felony. And then later on, it's pled down to a misdemeanor that wouldn't require, say the law was shaped in that way. We would have no way of knowing. Somebody would have to tell us. We would have to be some mechanism. And expungements, although they, certainly when necessary, but to do them routinely would probably require a dramatic increase in our personnel, people to deal with that, and to get rid of the way you have to do it is very time consuming, and to get rid of the samples and things like that. So it's something we really want to take a look at. It's not just what can we do, it's what can we afford to do. And I don't want to see us get in a situation where our labs are seen as not functioning because they're overwhelmed, and that could definitely happen with DNA.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that was my concern and the reason for asking that question. We've got 7 labs across the state. We're doing work for everybody. Everything they need is being done. Do you foresee a time when we won't be able to supply that without cost and charge? I know I'm asking to look in a crystal ball. Maybe we're just looking at next year, but
not when I'm commissioner. I would be completely opposed to that, and here's the reason why. Because if we start charging, municipalities are going to stop sending the evidence in to solve these crimes. It would be a real disservice to the people of Pennsylvania. I mean, this is I think 70% of the submissions to our laboratory are by municipal police departments. So I would say that would be a terrible mistake if we started charging them for this, because that's an area they'll cut. And then, there'll be crimes that'll be unsolved. And I would hate to think that if you live in a poorer area that you wouldn't be able to afford to send the evidence in. So I would definitely be opposed to that.
It's a very good point and very interesting budget discussion, so that we can foresee as best we can being able to manage, being able to fund those services. So thank you for what you do on a very limited amount, and please keep those cadet classes coming. Thank you.
I intend to. Thank you.